a process of state formation which Ethiopia has also experienced. You had also tested the concept of Abyssinian, as it was called Abyssinian previously, when you contested and brought Ethiopia into the picture here. Now, Ethiopia has the great tradition because it was never a colony of any colonial power we had in the colonial control of many years. But nowadays, the design of colonial powers that people gives us a kind of begin to fight such kind of colonial powers now. Colonial powers has not come directly to the army to control the resources of our country. But the colonial power in the form of tribes, in the form of financial empires like WTO, IMF, and Convoy, they have controlled almost all the developmental syndrome of our country. So much so I can also see in Ethiopia the neoliberal process also come there and also try to control the motives of Ethiopian development. Here we have a new form of new colonialism. We have to understand how it is burden on our people of our country. The entire resources of our country are now under the control of corporate sectors and neoliberal forces. And in this context, Ethiopia is not very different from us. And the people who are going to be marginalized, they are more marginalized, and those who are having more rich, they are more rich, they have become more richer than the past. So the gap between the status of the people, between the economic conditions of the people is increased. Whatever the patriotism was, we can understand. Still today, what is patriotism without going against neoliberal forces in the form of in the form of imperialism today that exists today? Ethiopia had fought into history. Even after 1945, when Haile Selassie came into the picture, had some kind of struggle against colonial power, and he was giving the challenge to colonial power. He carried the ethos of Ethiopian spirit and Ethiopian unity for a long time. Although the home conditions in Ethiopia might be quite different, but he fought and he attempted to have emphasis on African unity and unique organization of African unity came as the office inside Addis Ababa was established. So it was the source of inspiration where you also can. This is how we have to see the new challenge for which whatever we had also coordinated the people like before that also, we had tribal struggles in our country 100 years in 1757. That struggle is still continues. Only the change is that we are controlled not by the direct military power of the colonial power today, but the unseen empire, financial empire is controlling the entire thing. And this control is dangerous than the direct colonial power which they have control over our resources. So Adwa has some kind of significance and will be as the patriotic sections of this country to fight against this neoliberal onslaught of the new colonialism. So this is how we have to understand the similarity of Adwa is giving the signals, our freedom is giving the signals for a new India and new Ethiopia. I am opening another kind of debate from our students' resources here. You are free to interact and do some kind of points where the debate can take place. Please come.
My comments and reading some of, all of the compliments you have given. Professor, today I have understood that we really do not know our history properly. So I believe that this should be the right moment that we should first look into our back history, because I believe that one who does not understand his history properly and not move forward properly. When you give your deliberations on the Adwa, relevance of global south, I have understood so many things which I have not any clue previously. Even in the history, you have mentioned so many things. The Battle of Adwa itself, during the battle, the role of the Gita, which I didn't understand that. I have come to know that the role she played, I have heard it in one way or another, but the decisive role which she had played on that day, I didn't know it. I have come to know today. And you support the studies. Yes. Of course, why not? So, every one of our, our leaders, because after all, it's our history. But if right and correct, we should learn from it. We should not destroy it. So we should have studied for the interest and for others also. And the other point which you have mentioned is the Ethiopianism. It is relevant to current Pan-Africanism. Really, this has to be properly communicated. I don't think that many of Africans or African brothers know about this. Let alone them, we also do not properly know it. We are now coming to understand that. So, intelligence, scholars, other professors who are, in the field or who have the passion to know more about this area, deliver related to this kind of aspect. The other point, maybe you have mentioned it at the beginning of your presentation, the manifesto, the two manifestos, that I was expecting from a little more. If you can say more points on that, I really don't get it. And the other one is the spiritual community, which you have mentioned. I don't know how it can be related with the current way of thinking. The current way of thinking means, there is Ethiopia basically is a country of diverse nations, ethnic groups, languages, religions. Now, all these are there. So how do we use this spiritual knowledge? And more importantly, how we can, at wider perspective, how we can apply to the Pan-African concept, the concept of Pan-Africanism. As you said in the middle of your presentation, you said that we should appreciate the differences and celebrate the similarities. I really appreciate, Professor, that you have come with all your differences to celebrate, your similarities. So, Adwa, I believe that it should be one of our similarities. So, you have mentioned that you have some differences on the current regionalism of our country. But I believe it is one way that the current system try to address it, the diversity, the current diversity that the country has. So, I don't know. I respect your view, but this is the reality.
Will you respond back to that?
found will be there.
Yes. Now, let me just say a few things about Adwa.
It's not simply the Italians that were fighting this. That's what makes Adwa very fascinating. It's also the Italian effort supported by the British, by the German Kaiser, and other European colonial powers. Even elements within the British ruling circles contemplated assisting Italy with direct history. There was a very strong, united, because you see, the Europeans made a meeting, 1885, yeah, and so they made an agreement. They united. 3 months it took them to deal with Africa. So when this resistance came, of course they were united. So they supported Italy very strongly. In fact, when the Adwa victory happened, the British called it, in the press, they called it the foulest crime was committed against empire. They say that the more they denounce Adwa, the more it means it's successful. That's how I read it. The more your enemies say you are the worst, it means you are doing something good. So I see it in the foulest crime, is what the British press wrote about Adwa's. How can this happen to us? How can we allow a small country to beat us and defeat us? That's what happened. Another important thing I didn't mention, which I should have mentioned, I did it, but probably last night I was a bit tired, so I did it last night. For example, from 1889 to 1906, Pan-Africanist intellectuals like the Haitian Benito Silliman visited the country 4 times. That's why he was able to create Haiti, celebrate in 1904 the 100th anniversary. Then also Adwa inspired Africans from South Africa to the Americas. Marcus Garvey immortalized Ethiopia by incorporating the spirit of resistance of Adwa in the Black National Anthem. If you really read the Black National Anthem, you see Adwa also is mentioned. Emperor Menelik himself became an honorary member of one of the first Pan-African associations organized by the Haitian Benito Silliman. And also another important thing, from 1903 to 1904, the Cuban and Black American descent, William H. Ellis, visited the country twice with plans for Ethiopian economic development and the resettlement of African Americans. So, can I just say, from Brazil, I'm studying in South Africa. There's Dr. Matole, there's the Kara Heritage Institute, a very interesting man. He used to be the Gauteng Premier, now he's a very good friend of mine. He did his PhD in Harvard, excellent. He knows Ethiopianism, knows about Ethiopianism better than all of us. Amazing guy. We are studying about 1896, what happened to Ethiopians in South Africa. Now we are getting the names of the people who wanted to go and fight from South Africa when the Adwa battle happened. And now I hear from Brazil to all over, there were people doing it. And luckily also the professor told me he's read something that some Indians wanted to go and fight. So we need to find that article too. Somehow we need to find the source. I think it would be good to find out what inspiration it gave for a whole variety of people, both before, yeah, and after the victory. Even what sense we get out of it, and what the enemies also thought is very important. That linkage is very, very relevant, and that's why we must always remember this and really record it better, so that we can actually pass it on to the younger generation. I think we should do it like that. Now, on the 2 things you asked me about ethnicism in Ethiopia is not good. Let me give you a concrete example. Let me say something good about America. Usually it's difficult for me to say about America. American people are nice, I have no problem. I did my studies, they paid scholarship for me, they tried to look after me. They were nice to me, but I cannot be loyal to the American system. So I'm a bit critical of the American system. But there's one thing I like about America, the Constitution. It says, we the people. And and they go for the justice, liberty, equality. In Ethiopia, our constitution starts, we the nations, nationalities, peoples. How many? America has the tribes of the whole world. Almost the universe exists in America. We don't have that many tribes that Americans have. We don't have that variation. We don't have the same, probably, variation over even. India is extremely varied. One of the most varied. India is more varied than Africa. I'm telling you, in terms of variations. But India is a continental nation. I like to be a civilization. Don't reduce yourself to a nation. You consider yourself a civilization, I say. But whatever you say, the most interesting thing is how do you, when you recognize difference, how do you recognize difference? For example, in Ethiopia, I would recognize difference, but I would solve it positively. For example, I would say if you speak Oromia in Oromo Kulil, and only if you speak Oromia you can get a job in Oromo, then you create apartheid. Seriously, you do. It's basically created. So it's dangerous. Why do we have all these fights now in Ethiopia? Students are dying now. Why? We should completely change the system, the paradigm shift. What we need to do is, we appreciate difference, meaning we should make sure that key languages like Oromia are spoken by all of us. Tigrinya is spoken by all of us. Ge'ez should have been spoken by all of us. One of the big mistakes Emperor Haile Selassie made was that the language Ge'ez, like Latin language, should have been one of the state ministers at that time. As Haile Selassie was the emperor, the minister of education. There was two ministers, state ministers. One of them was from Harvard University. He was born from Gojam. I remember there was something like 240 graduates when the Italians came in the Second World War. And then nearly all of them were wiped out. They killed the educated people first. He was one of the survivors. His name is Makonnen Lester. He graduated at Harvard. He said, we need a national system. We do not need a British East African model, the Kenya, Tanzania model of education. We need a national system. So let's teach Ge'ez. He actually, I'm told, I need to find out. I need to go to the ministry whether they still have kept it. He actually created textbooks about how we could do it for teaching its children in Ethiopia with Ge'ez language. The emperor and the British and everything, they sit and they impose the East African model. So when I was educated, all these things I learned, please give me credit. I learned myself. I didn't learn anything in school. I never got anything from school. I never learned anything in Ethiopia. I went to America, I started writing about Malcolm X, I started Elliot Cleaver, Thomas Nice, Ralph Ellison, the Invisible Man. I started reading. Other things. Then I started reading, more reading, and then it's not my field. I did it because of love of Africa. So you do it like that. Then eventually you learn something new. That's what happened. The education system in Ethiopia is dangerous. It became a colonial system. Willingly we accepted colonialism. You just beautifully put it, all of you. This is the same thing you the Indians also willingly you are colonized. Willingly, not because the British are here to attack you, they are not doing anything to you. You take their thing, because if you don't validate it, you validate yourself through what they do. Like I wear this, now, just to make a point. You understand that on this day, it is not good for me, on the day of Adwa, that I'm speaking, that I do European clothes, this colonial clothes. No. Look at us, supposing we use our own indigenous stuff. Imagine we buy this thing, it costs us. Supposing we do it ourselves, you know what it means? Oh, people will be rich. They'll be okay. They will sell their goods. We don't do it. We're not clever. We are colonized. Mental slavery. You see?
I think it's, I told you, it's restructuring the structure again. So the colonial structure is always restructuring the mental construct. So even now, when we come to science, technology, or our knowledge systems in medicine or Ayurveda.
Yeah.
There's always a fight of patenting in America and India.
Yeah.
So always by default when something westernized or something scientific from the West comes, that is the word Western science is
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this mental constructs of this colonialism always work. So we ourselves are carrying forward this legacy of colonialism.
Yeah.
I think it's very problematic.
It is, I completely agree. It's nothing to do with others now fighting us. It's a willingness. Willingly we end up doing all kinds of things. I mean, look at the mall here. I mean, you go there, and what do they do? What do you, all the business, you know, when I go to the mall here, or Shanghai, you know, when I go, I feel as if I'm in Europe and America. In the mall here, yesterday I went there, and with all the models, all the brands are all, I feel as if I'm in London. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I mean, what I am saying to you is, it's us. We need to sort our people out, and we are. I mean, the informal economy here is very high. The African also, the majority of the population don't live like that. We need to find solutions, and we're not doing the solutions. That's what we should be looking for. Not trying to divide ourselves and use ethnicism. Ethnic rights, I accept. Ethnicism, I don't accept. Using ethnic rights as an example, as a means to embed ethnicism is not good. So if I had a chance, I will use Ethiopianism to the spiritual food to liberate us from, your leaders should be liberated from themselves, you know, willingly colonialists and so on. The other important thing, I think, in Ethiopia, there's more things. Also the foreign direct investment. You may grow your economy. Do the people in Ethiopia grow? I mean, when I was mowing across by driving, I was not happy when I saw most of the people. They have no shoes, they have no, the same thing I saw. So what is changing? Who is changing? When you have, I know Ethiopia is growing, there's infrastructure, there's good things, many universities, many things like that. I'm not against it, it's very good. At the same time, what is the well-being of the people? Are they changing? Is the life of the people changing? Is the majority of the people coming up like that? Is the economy will follow like that? Has that logic? Or is it getting Turkey to invest in us? Flower industry. Now there's a flower industry. Good urban land is given to the flower industry for producing roses for nice women in Europe. You know what? The Portuguese and the Spanish say no because it dries our land. Even Kenya said it dries our land, but in Ethiopia we did. And then we say the flower industry is a big thing. No. What kind of study was done? Climate's environmental study was done before we accepted this. We have to be clear on this law. For Ethiopia, just love for our land, for the people of Ethiopia, for also the survival of the country, for this nation, these people that provided so much spiritual food for the whole world. I mean, it's a country we should never hurt. We Ethiopians, we should agree now. If we have to make an agreement, a contract, we need to make a contract where we say hurting Ethiopia is hurting not just us, it's hurting the whole world that Ethiopia provided all this spiritual liberation, philosophy and idea to the world. And I think that's what we should say. So the manifestos just express this. It's the powerful manifestos. I think we should, I haven't put all of them in, but the manifestos are powerful. They bring in Ethiopia as with kind of the spiritual, and Ethiopia as an example of a capacity for self-rule, so that as black people we are able to do, we are able also to win against all the inherent powers. So we are capable, winning as black people for the whole or oppressed people. It gives meaning for all. So in that sense, I think Ethiopia is good and the manifesto is good. I think we should create another manifesto.
Okay, now we want to listen to Henry's scholars and others.
Sorry, but
Good morning. Actually, good afternoon. My name is Patsy Mustache. I'm the Deputy Head of Mission and the Acting Charge d'Affaires from the Seychelles High Commission. Thank you very much, Professor Muchie. I'm saying your name correct.
No, you did very well.
Thank you. So my background actually is African politics, and since I've been posted in India India, I have started to actually engage a little bit more on the India-Africa relationship. But that aside, I wanted to point out a few things, a few comments, and maybe a few questions. It's very interesting when you talk about the issue of education in Africa and not knowing a lot about Ethiopian history. This is not an Ethiopian issue, it's an African issue. I was born and raised in the Seychelles. My ancestors came from Africa, from Europe, and from India. And here's the thing, I knew nothing about Africa, except that it was a land of barbaric, a land of where we killed each other, a land where people are hungry, live in poverty, uneducated. This is what I was raised to believe in Africa, because we were fed by the Western media. I moved to South Africa to study for my first degree. And there I learned so much about Africa. And it made me realize that we Africans need to understand that our history did not start with chains. It did not start with colonialism. There's so much in Africa for us to understand. And we need to stop drilling into our children's head histories of Europe, of Hitler and Mussolini and whatever. Because these are all histories that glorifies colonialism. I'm an Oxford graduate. When I went to Oxford University, I brought in a new perspective on the views on African politics. And I was casted aside because I was courageous enough to see a different side of African politics. I didn't want to see the European colonial mentality towards colonialism. Because that's what they want to make you believe, that what the Europeans did in Africa was okay. They still believe it's okay because they have never apologized for slavery. 2007, the Prime Minister of Australia apologized to the Aborigines for what they did to them. 2007. We have never received an apology. Not that we expected. We should not expect it. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the issue of what was done in Adwa, the victories that was done. If you look at Africa nowadays, one of the biggest, the heart of Africa, based in Addis Ababa, the African Union. This is the heart that is supposed to be beating for Africa, for Pan-Africanists and African Renaissance. I'm a radical Pan-Africanist, actually. And you know who gave us that heart? China.
And who funds that? Who makes it big, 60%?
Exactly.
Europe.
Who gives the money to keep that heart running? Europe, 70% actually, and Japan and China. How can African leaders now go back to Adwa and say, look at what our ancestors fought so hard for us to achieve? And the heart that beats for Africa lies in the hand of an external power. It's very interesting. You said something about structures, proving the structures. Be careful whose structures we take. Be very careful whose structures that we take in Africa. Be careful about neocolonialism. The hand that gives is always above the one that receives. Never forget that. The third point I want you to raise also concerns the issue of democracy in Africa. I have big issues with African leaders wanting a Western democracy. The same Western democracy was used to abuse, to colonize, and continue to manipulate us. Africa will have our own version of democracy. We